It's one of those ironies that I'm always confronted with in my work in human design. The closer you get to places where the absolute helplessness of what it is to be human is, the harder it is for people to journey in that direction. It took me many, many years to teach the surface of human design, the body graph and the nature of gates and their lines. And yet at the same time, something that I've tried to indicate for many years now is to understand that this is the surface. These are the characteristics, and these are characteristics that are structures. They're structures. And in order for those structures to be able to operate, they operate through some kind of other originating force. In other words, in essence, what a line represents is a filter, and it is a filter for what lies beneath the surface. You know what it's like when I talk to people about being correct. You know, this is the essence. This is what it is all about. And yet it's so obvious that the lack of correctness, the power of the not-self, and the way in which it operates in the world, is that what we are dealing with is a disease in humanity, and it's a disease that's at the color level. It's not in the characteristics. There's nothing wrong with the characteristics. But think about something. Think about what it's like in the naivete of beginning your journey in human design. And you go through the obvious, type and profile and inner authority and strategy, and you begin your process and you begin to experiment. And so many human beings now that I've watched in their experiment, the difficulties that arise. It's something to understand that when you are not correct, you do not operate out of your own natural color. You don't. This is what this evening is about. It is about transference. And it's about understanding how important transference is for us to grasp. More than that, it is the beginning of another journey, a journey that I actually started in Sedona a number of years ago when I first began to teach the sub-levels of the line. Color is an extraordinary tool for us. It is the gateway to understanding two things that we have applied so much energy, intellect, and consciousness to. One of them is our basic health. And one of the things to be clear about when you're looking at the nature of color, that there is no relationship, that is, it is not structured in the same way as profile, between what your personality color is and what your design color is. And so this design color is something quite unique in its own right. And everything about the design color is the way in which the vehicle is motivated. And what I mean by that is, in the context of the vehicle, it's more the way in which the vehicle drives. And the way in which the vehicle drives is one of the fundamental areas of importance for us in terms of being able to grasp what proper health is. Proper health. And of course, proper health begins with being correct. It is from the correctness down that everything moves to its correct structure. The biggest problem that human beings have as not self is not so much that they cannot deal or grasp the characteristics. You tell somebody with a not self open emotional system that they avoid confrontation and truth, they will grasp that. But how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with it if you are not at the personality level properly motivated? And what we're really going to look at now, and what we're going to look at in relationship to the Encounter program, is that we're going to look at color in terms of the personality, and understanding that if you are living the not self, it is self-evident in the way in which your personality is motivated, because it's not motivated according to your natural color. Think about what that means. Let's say that you have some wonderful line that says, you can help others. Very nice. And everybody is very pleased. You're pleased, the analyst is pleased. You got this wonderful line that says, blah, 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 you can be very nice and helpful. Now think about how different that is if you're helpful out of fear. And think about what that means if you're helpful out of hope. And what does it mean if you're helpful out of desire? And then, of course, there's need and guilt and innocence. And what I'm really getting at is that the whole point isn't the line. It's never been the whole point. Never. It's interesting. Lines are interesting. No question about it. So many people get stuck in that moment of satori when they meet a line that describes something so deeply in their nature. They resonate. But you see, a line has 6 different ways in which it can be motivated. It is our psychology. It is the psychology of the passenger that this is all about. When I talk about awakeness, I talk about awakeness within the context of the passenger. Remember, that's what our story is about. Our personality crystals, within any kind of concept that we can understand, are relatively immortal. They've been there forever, reincarnating over and over and over again. And it is this personality that has to go through this process of surrender. Now, of course, the personality can't dictate that. That's what no choice is all about. The personality can only hope that it's lucky. That it's lucky in terms of the vehicle that it has. And of course, we know that's not true. We know that the only way that the personality is going to be liberated is when the vehicle operates correctly, and we know there's a way to get there. That is, there is a fundamental strategy, mechanical strategy for the vehicle. When we're looking at the passenger, the passenger is such a wonderful thing. I can remember years ago when I was doing introductory lectures, and I did too many of them. Anyway, I would do introductory lectures and I would talk about the 3 aspects of what we are: design, personality crystals, and the magnetic monopole. I would talk about the metaphor, if you will, of the design crystal being the vehicle, being an automobile, being a limousine. And that the driver of that limousine is the magnetic monopole. This is what holds us together in this illusion of what our life is, our illusion of what it is to be separated and unique. And at the same time, this is the driver of this limousine, and in the back seat, there's the passenger. There's the personality crystal. It doesn't even sit in the body. It's like one of those very long fire engines with a funny sort of cab at the back where you can be higher up than the whole vehicle. Look at the drawing of the body graph, and you'll see right away that the head center penetrates the skull. It goes above the head. Well, it's up there that the personality crystal sits. When I say up there, it's not very far from literally the surface of your head. These things are very tiny, and these distances are incredibly tiny, but it's still not in the vehicle. It is a passenger on a ride. It's sitting in the saddle. It's got a ride. And the whole thing about the passenger is that as long as the passenger does not grasp that, that's what it's all about, eh? As long as you don't grasp that you are on a ride and you have absolutely no control, then you're going to live the not-self, and your motivation is going to be wrong, and your psychology is going to be disturbed. It's so important to grasp this. This is all about the passenger. Awakeness. What do we mean by peace? It is the moment that the passenger only is interested in looking out the windows. Nothing more. I remember with extraordinary clarity and delight my first arrival on the island of Ibiza. And there were 4 or 5 people that I met in the first 24 hours that were really instrumental in changing my life. And one of them was a brilliant New Yorker, a guru chaser. But a guru chaser in a different sort of way, not a devotee, a kind of intellectual hunter more than anything else, a mind person. And he had been with the best. I mean, he had been with the best. He had been part of the revival of the new Sufis in India. He was with Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh before there was Pune 1 in the very, very early stages. He was the kind of man that had contact with all kinds of, well, very powerful forces. And in the first 24 hours that I was on the island, he was somebody that I was introduced to. And I don't know how the conversation got around to it. I asked him some kind of mundane question, and he looked at me kind of oddly, and he said to me, you know, he said, it's all about seeing, seeing, seeing. And I thought, what kind of nonsense is that? Who is seeing the seeing, seeing? I was not in a position to be able to even grasp that as a real concept. And yet the moment that you wake up as a passenger, and the moment that you wake up surrendered as a passenger, the first thing you realize is that there are so many levels of seeing. I've often said that I'm the same man that I used to be. I just see differently. Well, it's true. It's the seeing. Now, most human beings never get a chance to see. They don't. They're looking around. They're afraid. They're running around. They're chasing after what they think can be. They're going against everything that is correct for them, their strategy, their authority. They're living the not-self realm, and the force that's driving them is this underlying motivation of color. And it's never their own. Think of it. It's never their own. You come into the world, and you come into the world with the first color of your personality. Now, the first color is fear. So you come into the world, and this is the thing that's there to motivate you. Now, fear is an essential foundation to our development as a self-reflected consciousness. Without fear, there's no development of strategies. Without strategies, there is no perfection of the self-reflected consciousness. So fear is an essential ingredient. And if you're going to operate correctly as a passenger in a vehicle, then you have to operate through that fear. And yet you don't. Oh, you don't. Instead, what you have is a needy passenger. The fourth color. Needy, needy, needy. And telling everybody how needy they are. You know, it was part of the first 5 segments of the course that was aired this week at Jovian, is the recognition that when you're looking at the lower trigram colors, that is fear, hope, and desire, all of this is very personal. It's very personal, and keep your mouth shut. It's very personal. You know, you meet with an angel, don't you tell anyone. You meet a demon, don't tell anyone. You meet a ghost, don't tell anyone. No one. Oh boy, will you pay a price for your big mouth. It's just for you. But if you go to need or guilt or innocence, these are transpersonal. And everybody's got to get it. And there you are, a passenger that's supposed to be in this deep inner fear process, developing your intellectual strategies, literally being able to see the patterns in order to be free of fear. Totally. It's all binaries. The not-self is driven by forces that are absolutely incorrect for it. And everyone suffers from transference because color doesn't like to be fixed. Try to get that. Color doesn't like to be fixed. It likes messing us up. I don't really mean that in that sense, but that's what it does. The only way that you can lock it in is when you're correct. And the moment you lock it in, you move to the correct motivation. And the moment that the psychology is correct, you can begin to see. It's just seeing. You know, there's so many words that I've tried to use to describe the mechanical truth of choicelessness. helplessness, non-interference. This simple mechanism of withdrawing from the assumption that you have anything to do with anything. Just watch. Just watch. It's not like nothing's going to happen. It's not like your body's going to be still. It's not like your mind's going to stop working. It's not like your life's going to stop. But it's watching. It is no longer connected. It is no longer an authority. See, think about the way in which our personality works. It's deeply connected to our mind. You know that. It's this whole mental trip. And you see, you cannot operate as a passenger and benefit through the duality and the perfection of the duality of the mind unless you strip the mind of its authority. When you strip the mind of its authority, then you get from mind what it was intended to be. This wonderful word Maya, the Ma in Maya, from the Sanskrit, to measure. To measure. This is what the mind does. This is what it's so wonderful at. It measures this and it measures that. And you see, if you don't care what the results are, oh, is it fun? Because you don't have to. It's not up to you what's going to happen. It's not up to you how it's going to happen. It's not up to you what will come of it. Any more than it's up to you to follow your strategy or your inner authority. It's all a catch-22. If it doesn't happen, it isn't going to happen. It is the way of the world. It's something to grasp. If you're on a fractal and the fractal is moving you towards yourself, then boy, oh boy, you better let go. Not many chances in this world for those to be able to become true passengers. Not many chances at all. You look out at the vast majority of humanity and compare it to the vastness of the cells in your body. There are no N2 hierarchies, the 17.5. Don't ever forget it. Those neural cells are very different from the cells on the surface of your kneecap. You can scrape off 60 or 70,000 of those without any problem. Everybody thinks that overnight the whole world's going to wake up. Oh, if you understand the not-self and color, you know that's not true. It's even silly. It's a pointless idealism. This is a one by one business. And the great advantage that we have is our time. The movement of information and communication. The ability that we have in this kind of an environment to be able to transfer this kind of information. There's enormous advantages that we have in our time. But you have to see that in the end it's just about you. See, you have to look honestly at yourself. The beauty of being able to release now the Maya Mechanics Imaging GII, the Global Incarnation Index version, so that everybody can see their color. And to be able to look so carefully at that color of your personality and ask yourself honestly, is this what's driving me? Or is it the transference to the harmony? One of the magical things about any kind of system is that there are so many symmetries, there are so many ways of looking at things and their interrelationship to each other. One of the most important concepts when you deal with lines and you deal with sub-levels of lines is that the whole process of harmonies, resonance, and dissonance. Now, if you look at this illustration, basically this illustration shows you what harmonies are. In other words, if you look at the structure of the hexagram, and the structure of the hexagram is based on a 6, then what you will see is that from the 1, 2, 3 to the 4, 5, 6, that there is a relationship between this lower and upper grouping. So the 1, 2, 3 has a relationship with the 4, 5, 6. The 1 with the 4, the 2 with the 5, and the 3 with the 6. These are called harmonies. Now this is absolutely essential to grasp when dealing with color. There are very few people yet who really understand in any way, or really grasp in any way, how important color knowledge really is. I mean, this is something for you to understand, that you're at the foundation of one of the most important aspects of this knowledge. And by the way, my whole movement in teaching this knowledge has been to try to provide this within its two health-related categories. In other words, to deal with personality transference through rave psychology and my work with psychologists and psychiatrists, and on the other side, through the PHS, through the primary health system, to work with design color and transference there, because obviously transference in the vehicle means that the vehicle isn't, let's say, doesn't get the right fuel, isn't fueled correctly, and obviously that's going to end up being a problem for it. But at the same time, I've also realized something, that unless we make sure that the knowledge of color, that the existence of color, that its basic values, unless we make these more broadly understood, I think we're going to miss out on a lot of people who are going to grasp great truths about it and insights. It was the case of one of my Daily View listeners, who let me know, for example, that if you have a harmonic profile, in other words, the 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6, that you automatically have a 6 color for your personality. There are many things to be discovered when the knowledge goes out to a broader base. So I really, I want color to be something that people begin to recognize, but also for you to understand that the intent behind the release of this information in this way is to be able to provide basic health services. Okay, now look. We have harmony. Now, harmony is very important in terms of the way in which color transfers. But there are other things to understand. That is, as an example, and I only want to give this as an example, let's say that you have somebody psychologically who should be operating out of the first color, which is fear, but they're operating out of the fourth color, which is need. The way to heal them, which is a combination of, a teaching process with them, but at the same time, obviously, the healing process begins the moment that they're following their strategy, that it's not going to be simply a matter that they're going to be able to jump from need back to fear. In other words, they may have to go through desire or hope, or go the other way, through guilt and innocence, in order to get back to fear. So many people who, go through certain kinds of traumatic situations, the way in which they can get back to themselves is through various stages. So color is something that's very complex at the medical level, both at the psychological medical level and at the physical level. I want you to see it at the kind of popular psychology level, because I think this is the way in which we can bring it to a broader audience so that people begin to understand. In other words, when we're dealing with describing the not-self, yes, at one level it's very simple to be able to go to the open centers and say, okay, you've got an open splenic center, so you hold on to things that aren't bad for you. But the point is that not only do they hold on to things that aren't bad for them, but you really have to see the motivation underneath. You have to see that they have shifted, that they have transferred. So, for example, they may be holding on to things that aren't good for them out of need instead of out of fear, and it makes a difference. If they were only holding on to something out of fear, it would mean that they were operating correctly, and that they would be right to hold on to that, because after all, the splenic system is looking for its inherent security. I mean, there's so many things to understand about the way in which the binary leads us to moral decisions about the value of this or that over and over and over again. And yet we do not see properly in order to be able to see that for what it is. We don't. And the vast majority of human beings who have ever commented on the nature of being human have not been motivated correctly. I mean, if you think about that, you have to see that the whole construct upon which our civilization is built, well, they got it all wrong. It's not like they got it all wrong in the sense that they could have done any different. They couldn't have. It's the whole thing about change. It's the whole thing about mutation. Everything about this knowledge coming into the world in 1987 is that it is a revolution. And it is a very, very deep and profound revolution that's tied to mutation as much as anything else. There is this vast mutation that's at work. So when you're looking at your chart, when you're looking at anybody's chart and you look at it through GII so that you can see the color, the first thing for you to look at is the harmony. What's the harmony? Because it's the harmony that is their motivating force. Now, if you're a professional analyst and you're doing a reading and you understand the transference, you can bring quality to your description without ever even mentioning it. You can bring a quality to your description that will change the whole frequency of your reading, because you're touching something below the surface. Below the surface. I mean, this is what the psychological giants were interested in. This is what they were looking for. This brings us back to the theme of encounter. And again, how interesting it is that this transference, not only does it deny you the right to live correctly as yourself, because it won't fix. You can only fix it by being correct. You can't fix it any other way. So it's not going to fix on its own. It's not going to be lucky for you and be fixed. It automatically transfers. This is the whole thing to grasp about color. It's like a chimera you're trying to hold in place, and it doesn't want to hold in place. I mean, it's the greatest change that takes place in somebody who goes through their 7-year process, is that they begin to align to their true motivation. Now think about the whole nature of encounter and why we have such problems with encounter. Because the vast majority of encounters, just about every encounter that's ever taken place on the planet, has been taken place through transference. Through transference. There you are, number one color, looking for the gods and wanting to tell everybody about it. And you're not going to get your angel. You're not. You're not going to get that, private shot of smack that's going to make you feel real nice and pleasant while the angel helps you along with its plan. You're not. See, everything about the nature of color is that color is really the key to understanding what people have always talked about as enlightenment, what I call awakeness, because for me enlightenment is an extreme. It's not healthy. To be awake is ordinary. I mean, it's ordinary. It's supposed to be ordinary. I mean, it's mechanically accessible. And the whole thing is to see that the malaise of our planet, I mean, all of this mess that's out there, this is the realm of color. It's where color controls us. And when we deal with our spiritual lives, look at what we get. We get what doesn't belong to us. We don't get the encounters that are ours. We don't. So they don't really work. And the message is jumbled. And the stories are confusing. And on and on and on. And like any other binary, they can become so unhealthy. And do. Because they don't belong to you. Oh, to get what belongs to you. It's this human experiential way that's rooted in the 41st gate. It sends us on this incredibly mundane, ignorant journey. No choice. It is the human experiential way. There are all those fantasies to be lived out, all those dreams to be grasped at. It goes on and on and on. The Maya is so dense with those illusions. Dense, dense, dense with it. And out of every 10 or 15 or 20 million humans that go through this mundane plane, one of them gets lucky. Yeah, it's just the way the wheel turns. And the one that gets lucky convinces the 20 million that they too can still succeed. It's the folly of vanity. It is the vanity of the assumption that one is in control of anything at all, ever. You're not. You're not. Can't be. It's just not possible. This is just a movie. You too can stick your head through the sky. I know, I have. But you still have to bring it back in. You still have to live in the movie, and it's just a movie. And if you're not properly motivated, you're a lousy actor. You're not going to really have a leading role in that movie. You'll probably get fired and turned into an extra so that you can be furniture for the rest of your existence. It's just a movie. And if you're going to live out the beauty of what it is to be here, and it is truly beautiful, then your passenger has to let go of trying to be in control. It has to. See, the only real value of color is when you're awake. Because when you're awake, it's the thing that will move you directly to your purpose. I've talked to people about what happens at the end of your 7-year deconditioning process, that, when you get on your cross, that's quite a force that drives you, and it drives you in a very different way than you've ever been driven before, because your motivation changes. It changes. You can't imagine how distorting it is. First of all, you don't have your allies. It's like this whole thing about encounter. Every time I give a fuzzy course like this, there's always a lot of people that show up. And yet it's such a joke, because I think it's special. But encounter like awakening is not special. It's going on all the time, but you don't see it. Seeing. You don't see it. You don't see them. You don't see it. It's always there. It's not like you've got to wait for that one spectacular moment in your lifetime. They're all around. They're everywhere. You're never alone. No one is. Ever. Ever. You don't see it. You're too busy looking around. You're too busy being motivated by all the wrong things. You're too busy being caught up in the pain and the agony and the selfishness and stupidity of the not-self. Every day that this knowledge moves in the world, it's going to meet along its fractal journey those that are going to resonate, and they're going to wake. They're going to awaken. That's clear to me. I watch it all the time. And the beginning of this process of beginning to see that when you show somebody color, when you talk to somebody about color, you're talking about the most deep concept they're ever going to have to deal with, and you are ever going to have to deal with. And it is the concept of absolute helplessness. No choice. No choice. No choice. This is what color is all about. The moment that you can grasp that by not being correct, color transference distorts the whole frequency of the planet. And no matter what you do, no matter how smart you are, no matter what meditation you've got, no matter what pill you swallow, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Nothing. All you can do is hope that you're lucky too. That you're on the right fractal. That your line of geometry has brought you to a place where the opportunity exists for you to mechanically resonate to the structure of the Maya we live in. And when you mechanically resonate to this structure, when you're following your inner authority, when you're honoring your strategy, it's the only way the passenger can finally let go of trying to be in control. Takes time. I know. Takes time. But you see, when you liberate the mind from the false responsibility of being the inner authority, you discover it has other potentials. You know, it's like the blind musician. Somehow their very blindness has added some kind of additional focus, whatever it may be, to their other senses, to their ears, to their touch. It is the same thing when the passenger lets go of trying to be in control. The mind changes. It changes. You see, when it's not looking for an angle in order to hopefully control its destiny, it gets to see what's going on. That's what we're here for. We're here for the show. And it's a really good show.